Anyway, we need to move on to our final topic. Downtown Wichita is like a lot of downtowns in other cities. Much of the business has moved to the suburbs, and city leaders are trying to stem the tide with a revitalization effort. But is the city being too heavy-handed and too involved? Bob Weeks traveled to California recently to take a look at the so-called Platinum Triangle and compare. And Bob, I know your feelings on this. You wish the government would back out of this, among other things. Tell me what you found in the Platinum Triangle, though. Let's see if there's an alternative.
Well, what I found, Tim, was this is a district in Anaheim, California. The stadium where the Anaheim Angels play baseball is in the Platinum Triangle, and it's very close to the Disneyland area. I found that there's a lot of planning still going on, Tim. I mean, it just can't happen that there's no planning at all. But what they've done in Anaheim there is they've done some things that will definitely soften what I would call the heavy hand of government in the planning process. And I think that these things are contrary to the way that Wichita and Kansas has gone about development in some ways. We don't know yet really whether it's going to be a success in Anaheim or not. There's been a housing crisis in Southern California that slowed down the progress of actual building in the Platinum Triangle, but it looks like a promising thing. Some of the things that have happened there are being noticed in other cities in Southern California, and they're starting to adopt those things there. So I made the trip there. I had met Stephen Greenhut, who's the senior editorial writer for the Orange County Register. That's the newspaper that covers the Anaheim area. And we got to talking about the downtown development process, and he set me up with some appointments, including the mayor of Anaheim and a former council member. And so I went there and learned some things.
I read your article, and there are a couple of points in here that I find to be very interesting, and I think most people probably don't really think that development can succeed without these two things happening. However, in this situation, you say they don't, and of course those are TIF districts and eminent domain, you know, the ability for the government to come in and take property. And you say that does not happen. Neither one of those happened in this case?
Yes. In the Platinum Triangle, the Anaheim City Council made I don't know if they passed an actual law, but they made a pledge that eminent domain, in other words, the taking of property by government to give to another private party for the purposes of economic development, that would not be a part of what happens in the Platinum Triangle. And so far, they have honored that pledge, and the Platinum Triangle has the parcels of land have been assembled without the use of eminent domain.
And we've actually changed our law here in Kansas on eminent domain that makes it a little bit
We have
difficult.
A fairly new law that came into effect in 2007 whereby the traditional use of eminent domain to take property to build a road or something like that can still happen in the normal course. But for economic development purposes, a city like Wichita would have to get specific permission from the legislature for these specific tracts of property to be taken by eminent domain. Now, whether this is a strong pledge or not, some people think that it's a pretty good protection for property rights in Kansas. I tend to have my doubts, but certainly that still could be a part of the process in Kansas. The other thing that you mentioned are the TIF districts. Now, Wichita has a lot of TIF districts. The mayor and the city council and everybody else downtown thinks TIF districts are just great. And I think it's partly because a lot of people don't understand how the TIF districts works, and basically they allow a development to retain its property taxes for the exclusive benefit of that development. Well, everybody else has to pay property taxes that go to fund the general operations of government. In California, they're called redevelopment districts. Here we call them TIF districts. But again, no TIF districts or public subsidies in the Platinum Triangle in Anaheim.
And TIF stands for Tax Increment Finance, so
exactly.
people know what that means.
Yes.
You know, I guess my thought, though, Bob, is how do you lure business in if you don't give them some incentives? You know, particularly to a place like Wichita, and nothing wrong with Wichita. I've lived here for many, many years. But how do you, Randy laughs, how do you lure businesses in if you don't give them some incentives?
Well, I think what the mayor of Anaheim would say is that by pledging not to use eminent domain, which removes a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen, and also not to be so heavy-handed in some of their other development policies as well, that is an attractive environment to some developers. Now, there are some developers who would prefer to be selected the preferred developer and to have the TIF districts and the subsidies lavished upon them. They might not be as interested in developing under these conditions as are the companies that are getting ready to do it in the Platinum Triangle. So certainly development could be different under these circumstances than under a more traditional type of approach. The difference, I think, is the traditional approach is one driven from the top down by politicians and bureaucrats. This in the Platinum Triangle is more driven from the bottom up by what people are expressing that they would like, and developers are using their own money, their own funds to satisfy these needs that they perceive people have.
Randy has a point, I think, or a question?
This is amazing, but I'm going to agree with Bob partially one more time today. I think
I need to have a bell out here or something.
I think top-down development is a mistake. We could kiss and make up here. But I don't agree with him at all about TIF financing. I think TIF is a great thing for development. The money is used by government for infrastructure, not for the private industry to build bigger buildings or have fancier bathrooms, and so it benefits everybody in the city. If you have a vibrant downtown with better streets and sidewalks and better lighting and parking, that's good for everyone. I'm not a fan of eminent domain, and it strikes me that what we've done in Kansas is exchange one form of government heavy-handedness, the local level, for another form of government heavy-handedness at the state level. And frankly, I'd just assume Wichita be in control of its own destiny rather than the folks in Topeka telling us what we can do and what we can't do. Local control, I think, is a better way to go, generally speaking. But one thing I'd like to say, and I'd like to hear Bob's comment on this, I'd like to see Wichita, when it's doing this planning, and we're starting the planning business, to plan a downtown development that is not derivative, that is not copying other cities, but that is unique to Wichita, and will take advantage of what we have in Wichita, which is the river area, obviously, some historical things, and a good entrepreneurial business spirit, a free enterprise spirit here. We can't be Oklahoma City, we can't be Tulsa, we can't be Omaha, and we need to stop trying to be. We need to try to develop our own identity, and in the planning process, do something that's unique for Wichita.
We've got about a minute and a half for your response.
Well, I would agree with that too, Randy, that if we try to copy the other cities around us, then that really doesn't give us a distinct competitive advantage. So I definitely agree that we should try to do something. And this sounds very plain and mundane, but one thing that Wichita has is we have a fairly low cost of living in Wichita, and that's something I think is very attractive to a lot of people looking for a place to live. So we need to preserve that, I think, is what we need to do.
Guys, we have less than a minute left. Any final comments, Randy, Bob, Fred?
Well, there's nothing more important to the future of this city, I think, than downtown development. If a city doesn't have a good downtown, it doesn't have a heart and soul. And I hope Bob learned some good lessons in Anaheim, and I hope we can learn good lessons too. But Anaheim is a suburb of the giant LA area. It's a rambling, scrambling, full of roads and interstate highways, and it's not like that core development that we need here.
We are out of time, guys. That's all the time we have this week. If you have any questions or comments about this program, please email me at kansasweek@kpts.org. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.